So there's a term floating around right now called a shadow Fed president. And what exactly does that mean? Well, before we get into that, let's talk about interest rates real quick. Because interest rates have been stuck in this upper 6% range on a 30-year fix, and we can't really seem to get much lower. There's been a lot of volatility, and a lot of this has to do with inflation and the job market. And ironically, those are the two mandates that the Federal Reserve have when it comes to controlling monetary policy. Their two main job duties are to keep inflation under control and to make sure we have a robust job market. Now, inflation has pretty much leveled off. We saw record high inflation during the COVID years, but it's come down and it's kind of leveled off. Everyone now is expecting the job market to break because that is what we need in order to see lower interest rates. So even though there has been signs of the job market softening, every month it just seems that we get this new BLS jobs report that comes out, and it typically beats expectations. So that's been the Fed's reluctancy to lower rates, is because I personally believe that they're waiting for the job market to break, to get softer. So that would be the reason they need to lower rates. The other thing would be inflation, but even though inflation has come down, the Fed is kind of digging their heels in on inflation because they want to see what happens with the tariffs. Now, let's move on to this whole shadow Fed president. As most of you know, Jerome Powell is our current Fed chair. Now, the Federal Reserve, there's 7 members. You have a chair, which is Jerome Powell, a vice chair, a chair supervisor, and then the remaining 4 are the board of governors. So what's happening right now is there has been this rift. There's been this conflict, this tension between Jerome Powell, the current Fed chair, and our president, Donald Trump. Trump and a lot of other economists and experts do want to see lower rates. They feel like what has happened in the current job market and what's happened with inflation, that it definitely warrants the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates. Jerome Powell, on the other hand, is being very conservative and is not taking that bait just yet. He does not want to commit to lowering interest rates till he sees what happens with these tariffs that were recently put on by the president, what impact that'll have on inflation. And also, he'd like to see a softer job market before he goes ahead and cuts interest rates. So since there is a lot of pressure on lowering rates, and by the way, this would be good for the housing market too. So there's a lot of realtors, homeowners, mortgage professionals that want to see lower rates. We feel like it's warranted now. We've been in this upper rate environment going on 3.5 years now. So lower rates would definitely help a lot of people out there, especially people looking to buy a home. So the problem we're running into is this conflict between the president and the Fed chair. So we know that the president can't remove Jerome Powell. They are an independent governing facility. The president elects the Federal Reserve chair, and then it's confirmed by the Senate. But there is a gray area whether the president could remove the Fed chair. And Trump talked about this, and the market reacted negatively. Basically, the market said they would not want to see something like that. They don't want the president to have that much power and be able to remove the federal chair. So Trump did back off of those comments. Now, the only thing he can really do now is wait it out, because Jerome Powell's term ends in May of 2026. So we're literally 9 to 10 months away for his term to be up. So knowing he can't get rid of Jerome Powell, one of the things he can do, though, is start talking about who's going to replace him. This is where the term shadow Fed president comes in. Now, one of the requirements to be Fed chair is you have to have currently served as a board of governors. One of these 7 people that are currently make up the Federal Reserve, they usually agree. A lot of the times they're on the same page about monetary policy and where rates should go. But there have been some chatter within. There are some people that are buying into the idea of lowering rates. So what the president could do, President Trump that is, he could start to talk about one of the people within the current Federal Reserve system or Federal Reserve board members or governors that's going to replace Jerome Powell. Obviously, it's going to be someone that is rate that wants to cut interest rates. And if you start to really get that person out there and into the public, and we start to kind of see what their views are, then Jerome Powell becomes a little less relevant, especially towards the end part of his term here. So because of this, I think this whole shadow Fed president could actually start to pick up some steam. And if this person that's going to replace Jerome Powell is more rate friendly in the sense of lowering interest rates, I would see the market start to pick up on this in the second half of this year. So once they start to pick up on this, we might start to see rates just organically come down. And then, of course, early next year, when Jerome Powell is replaced and a new Fed president elected, I think one of the first agendas that they do will cut interest rate. So the shadow Fed president is just a theory right now, but this is something that could gain some steam. And because of it, I do think we could start to see lower rates on the second half of this year, but definitely into the early part of 2026. And of course, after May of 2026 as well. So the bottom line here, whether you believe this shadow Fed president is a good idea or not, and the tactics that go on behind the scenes between current president of the Fed and, of course, President Trump. Regardless, I do think we're going to see lower rates in the near future here, and that will be good for homeowners and people that are looking to buy in the near future. I hope you have a great day.